So, is it possible to grow in your career and find a great job and have growth with your relationship with God at the same time? As you develop yourself, is it possible that you could have spillover to increase your position or have greater growth in a career? I would say absolutely. The two are linked. As you optimize yourself internally, that will definitely bleed over and have greater success in a career. So let's talk about those two ways of looking at things. If we look at, when you start a job, the best thing you can do is look at, what they value, adopt their values, adopt their mission statement, adopt their focus. All businesses, it's not a mystery, their job is to maximize profits and reduce expenses. So on the other hand, is the greatest thing we can do to have greater growth with God is to adopt his purpose and become what he values is what you value. You don't tell God, talking about values, you don't tell God what he values, he tells you. And hopefully, talking about values, you can find a career that aligns with your internal values. Speaking about a couple values, I'd like to talk about humility and integrity. Um, when it comes to business, very interesting. This CEO I found online with an online search, what some CEOs were talking about, some of their greatest qualities in finding the right people for their company. And this uh, Sukhwinder Singh Cassidy, he was a CEO of an online website for shopping, and he talked about what he values in an employee. I love really smart people who are focused on the good of the company before themselves. I thought that was a key. I thought that was very good. That gets my respect like nothing else. It's a unique combination to find somebody who is so capable and smart, but at some level but has some level of humility about their place in the entire ecosystem. So they know they know the overarching picture, they know how they fit in, and they know how to do their part to make the whole system run better. Can you do the same thing with God? Do you have the overall picture? Do you know what his purpose is? Do you know how you fit into that purpose? And you'll grow in your relationship with God. You let God do the teaching. You have to become teachable. You know your place in the system, in the hierarchy. You know you are receiving help from him, and so you're willing and able to help others. Of course, integrity also is a huge value to have in business. Warren Buffett, we all know him as the CEO and chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. He said this about finding the right people in his company. He said basically, you're looking for three things generally in a person: intelligence, energy, and integrity. And if they don't have the last one, don't even bother with the first two. So he recommends having integrity is more than just being honest. It also means doing what you think is right for the company, even if it makes you temporarily unpopular. So that's huge, right? Doing the right thing regardless of how popular it is. And of course, to have integrity, um, just a second, I thought I had to sneeze. I guess I don't. Uh, So, yeah, exactly. Holding fast to your beliefs, even though you'll be hated by the world, and having discussions with friends honest discussions that could end a friendship that need to be said. But so basically, over here, you could be temporarily hated by the company for doing the right thing. Over here, if you're progressing with God, you could be hated by the world for the rest of your life for doing the right things and have consequences for doing so. You know, how does a how would a business owner expect you to handle customer service? They would want you to handle it like if they were standing in your place, how you would handle that customer if they've got a grievance, if they've got a difficulty. They would want you to act the same way that they would in their place. And that's exactly what God expects. He expects you to act, think, and feel like he would in all situations, not just at work. Commitment. What kind of commitment does it take to succeed in a company? Well, you have to be 100% committed. You can't be taking hour and a half, 2 hour lunch breaks and, just standing around talking to coworkers and scrolling on your phone. You're not providing any value. The paycheck you're getting is way more than what you're worth. You have to provide greater value to the company than what you're getting in a paycheck. Um, it's not about just putting the bare minimum so you can get the paycheck. It should be about increasing your capacity, increasing your qualities so that they recognize the value, so they want to promote you. What does it take with God? Everything. Give all of your heart, might, mind, and soul to God. And part of that, of course, is searching for ways to maximize long-term benefit to everybody, to all people. And I'm going to talk about that more, this long-term benefit idea. What about the long-term perspective? With a company, it has a defined timeline. You get hired, and years ago, you could retire for the same company 30 years later. That's almost possible these days, but you have a timeline for working. I knew a guy that owned an IT business. He sold his business, retired, and he lost his purpose. His whole life was that business. His whole life was his greatest benefit and greatest joy he found in life was that business. And so when he retired, his life kind of retired, and his life crumbled in retirement. I talked to him. There was a big hole in his life. And he didn't know how to fill it. So greater, higher level is to have that relationship with God, to have that as being your overarching goal in life, solid ground. He doesn't go out of business. He doesn't retire. That's the better, higher ground. And so part of that, you're always searching for ways to increase long-term benefit, like I said above. So if we want to grow in a relationship with God, the best thing that we can do is, like I said, take on his purpose. Adopt his purpose because they're higher and better than what we have. Anything that we could think of. His purposes, his values are better and higher than ours. But what does that mean? What does it mean to take on his purpose? In scriptures, we find out, his purpose is to bring forth the eternal life of men and to make their lives more abundant, as Jesus said. Give life more abundant. But if we want to break it down more, what is this eternal life that he's trying to give men and women? It breaks down to very simple. It's about growing, about learning, progressing, making improvements. There's always better and higher ways of doing things. And so really those 2 points, more abundant life and improvement, the two are related hand in hand. If you're improving, you by definition, you have a better life. So what's the benefit? Why should you focus on his purpose? If you're able to make that your only purpose, no good thing will be withheld from you. The windows of heaven will open up because you're aligning yourself with what he wants. What you want and what he wants are the same thing. You will not ask for anything that he would not want. So everything that you ask for, you will be given. That's huge. How can you help him with his purpose? What improvements can you make personally, at home, at school, at work? What improvements can you help your spouse make? If you're married, newly married, what improvements can you help your children make? Your friends, your coworkers? And it really comes down to what's important to God becomes important to you. Becoming an extension of who the business owner is. You speak, act, think like the owner would. If you buy a McDonald's franchise, there is nothing left to chance. They show you how to run the business from opening the doors to closing the doors at night. Every little detail. making hamburgers is probably the least of it. How to train and promote within and how to everything they teach you. And they actually send you to a hamburger university so that customers, if they go to every single McDonald's in all 50 states, they get the same experience. Maybe you should make that your goal if your goal is to be 1,000 pounds. So, of course, likewise, God sends us to his university. We're here at his university now, learning to do things his way, not our way. But as far as helping others improve, how do you help someone progress? How do you have that conversation with a friend that you know needs to be said that could jeopardize that friendship? What's more important, helping them progress or that friendship? It's very difficult sometimes. What if someone's stuck? They're just stuck. You can't seem to get out of a problem that you've figured out how to conquer. I've never been involved with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, but they've got a tremendous program that's worked for a lot of people. And they've got a 12-step program. And the last step of that program, as someone's become sober for at least a year, is their job to help others, their job to help others improve. They sponsor other people. They become mentors. They help others take the steps to sobriety. This is the path I took every minute of every day by redirecting my focus and my energies and my mind to higher and better things. How can you help people live with greater joy? How can you help people recognize greater value and let go of lesser things? Well, number one, you have to do that yourself first. So, taking on God's purpose, adopt his values, adopt how he thinks. How does he think? Well, it goes back to uh, in the Excel spreadsheet, what grants the greatest long-term benefit? How does he think? Everything he does is for our greatest long-term benefit. All of our decisions should be based in that. We should wear a ring and have the initials carved GLTB, GLTB, GLTB. What's the greatest long-term benefit? Instead of a CTR, we should have a GLTB. But I mean, it comes down to every decision that you make. And I mean, let me put up this list. I think maybe it would be greatest long-term benefit. What kind of car do you drive? What kind of food do you eat? When do you eat? What kind of movies do you watch? What's the greatest long-term benefit? What kind of friends do you hang out with? What do you spend money on? Well, that's the long-term benefit. And of course, all of these ways of thinking lead to a lot of times hard and painful decisions. But what's the greatest long-term benefit? Maybe it's time to make new friends. Maybe it's time to get a new job. Maybe it's time to tell your son or daughter to move out. Maybe you, as the son or daughter, say, I've got to move out. Maybe it's time to find a new girlfriend or just to be alone and say, Lord, it's just you and me. Maybe that's the greatest long-term benefit. Maybe it's time to downsize, find a new place that has rental options. Maybe it's time to budget and look at how you spend every single dollar so you can save for a house. So this way of thinking, how God thinks, should be a center of how every decision is made. Maybe I should stop eating ice cream at night. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. But bottom line, adopt how he thinks, adopt how he acts, adopt how he would speak, adopt his purpose. It's the greatest thing you can do here and now.